If you're still in school or you're still in college, I think you should really finish this video because this is like some of the most important information you might get. I think personally, in my personal opinion, I think it's one of the most important things you can hear. All right, please don't be dead, and please don't blue screen. What the frick did I just tell you? Where did it go? I really need to get a new PC immediately. Unfortunately, you need money for that. I think blue screens aren't real and they're not a real problem. They just happen to all of us sometimes. They don't mean anything. It's fine. Everything's always fine. I wouldn't normally wear this on camera because it's like, this is a 10-year-old shirt. It's like, it's worn so thin that it's actively disintegrating. And the only reason I can wear it on camera is because, look, there's this little black bits right here that cover my nip. Kids, today we're gonna be sharing an embarrassing story. We're gonna be sharing journalism. Not journalism. We're gonna be sharing journaling from me in high school. So this is gonna be nipples. Let me give you some backstory while I find this Google Doc. When I was graduating high school, I felt really terrible about the whole thing. And I had written this just sometime right around. This is something I've done a few times in my life where I just like, when I'm feeling really terrible, when I'm feeling like a lot of emotional pain, I'll do some kind of like hybrid between writing a story, like a children's book kind of story, but like a twisted and horrible one, and like journaling. It'll be like a cross between those. It's going to be cringe warning. Viewer discretion is very advised. But I mentioned that to protect my own ego because it's probably going to be bad. It's probably going to be bad, but the real art is the fact that I'm sharing this. It's not the actual story itself. I think there's something to be gleaned from this whole thing. So I'm going to put myself out here. The story is called 22 Ducklings. I wanted to capture the feeling that I was feeling right at the moment. And this is what my brain vomited out. I have not read this since I wrote it years ago. I guess I should probably stop stalling and just read it. Oh, BT Dubs and BT Corn. This is like a podcastable video. You can like watch this while doing the dishes and stuff. Just like so you know, there's not really any interesting visuals that you're missing out on. Okay, bye. 22 ducklings are walking in a row. Some stumble, some trip, but most of them move forward just fine. At the end of the line, they seem to walk uprightly, confidently leading the pack. For a time, they walk, but soon they must swim. Now, swimming is harder for all the ducks of this species, but most of them adapt just fine. One of the ducklings at the front of the... I freaking have no reading comprehension or ability. One of the ducklings at the front of the line seems to be swimming a bit differently from the rest, but he maintains his place at the front. After all, it's all he's ever been known to do. It's the only expectation he knows he can meet. As the ducklings swim out into the confinement of blue, the water grows turbulent. By this point, our struggling head duckling friend is fighting hard. The other ducklings start to notice him and his irregular form. It was quaint to them and difficult to swim alongside him. All the ducklings gave him a fair chance, but it was awkward and uncomfortable. Although they still paddle to the same end of the water, they begin to drift apart, flapping and... that's a separate sentence. They begin to drift apart. Period. Flapping and splashing, the duckling clenched his beak and maintained his speed. He was tiring out quickly, and, in his flanking course to the land, he began to encounter more and more vegetation. It wasn't uncommon that a duckling would encounter weeds and algae along the way, but this was a different kind of plant. It didn't simply get in the way of his swimming, it seemed to grasp at his poor little legs. Recognizing his peril, he tried to struggle back to the group, but he just couldn't reintegrate. So the black weeds tugged harder. The other ducklings didn't try to alienate him. They never knew about the weeds below the water. So the lone duckling pressed on, grasping and taking on water the whole way. Ahead of them now was a small island, just a little rest in the hard journey they've been working so hard to accomplish. One by one, the ducklings plopped onto that sandy, grassy shore. They shook off, they chatted, and they cleaned off the plants that had gotten stuck to them. Many of them even had a bit of the black weeds on them, but there was one duckling who didn't clean off his weeds. Indeed, it was the struggling yet speedy duckling from earlier. He lay washed up on a more remote part of the island. He had fallen quite farther behind where his reputation would have you believe. He was covered in black tendrils that threaded through his legs, his wings, and his feathers. even wrapping itself around his eyes. His famed well of strength had run dry, just barely carrying him to the island. He couldn't walk or rest or otherwise clean himself up while he had time, so he just laid there, exhausted and slimy. He couldn't lie down for too long as the chattering quacks of his peers began to pick up with volume. They were leaving. The duckling snapped awake and had begun to run, dragging his little body along with the long black mass trailing behind him. He continuously tripped and hurt himself, slamming his head into the ground, but he had to maintain his speed. No, he had to be faster. Fortunately, he was able to leave some weeds behind as he desperately ran to the water. Finally seeing those familiar ocean waves again gave him comfort, knowing that he would make it back to his group. He was calm for a moment and leapt into the waves, but as soon as he was back in the water, it all came back to him. The water was never the haven of comfort he expected. In an instant, his fear of being left behind transformed into a more fatal fear of drowning, and a more familiar one at that. He puffed and paddled, wishing that grim mass tugging behind him would just slip off, but nothing was going to save him from it any time soon. Eventually he made it back to his old standing near the front of the group, and again he tried to connect with the other ducklings, but each interaction was more awkward than the last. And the fear that guarded his every attempt grew stronger. Days and nights passed. The duckling had become accustomed to dipping in and out of the water. He had all but given up hope until they saw it for the first time in the distance. The water's edge. None of the ducklings were immune to their nerves, but many were excited to complete their migration. Yet the struggling duckling wasn't excited to be done with his voyage. He had heard many accounts of older ducks who had made the distance. They'd tell of the same malice in those weeds everywhere out there. If he could barely survive in the water, surely he wouldn't be able to make it outside of this watery cell. This was no victorious march to freedom, but a tortuous track to execution, the beginning of the end. There was one last island on the way, one final rest at the gateway to the rest of life or of death. The struggling duckling arrived with the group this time, but took his time getting out of the water. One by one, all the other ducklings passed him by as they hopped out of the water. Just as the previous stop, the ducklings dried off, prepared for their final stretch. Yet there lay the young duckling with that demonic black algae clasping from inside of his nostrils down to the trailing tendrils several feet behind him. Because of the weight of expectations and the unrelenting speed of life, he had never known how to properly deal with his situation. He knew that this would be his last opportunity with his fellow ducklings. Recalling his overcoming of the last island for strength, he picked himself up and slowly rose to his feet. He trudged methodically towards the others with all the courage he could muster. The sloshing behind him was deafening, the dark sludge on his face blinding. The ducklings were chatting amongst themselves when they began to hear the sloshing. They didn't know what to think of the noise, so they just watched and waited as it grew louder and louder until finally the duckling came into view. They were horrified. Most froze at the sight of their smothered comrade, but one by one the ducklings did what they could to pick off the stubborn vegetation. It was the first time in a very long time that he felt accepted by his peers. It was the first comfort he had known since the time they had hopped into the water. But it soon became clear that their efforts wouldn't be sufficient. As they picked away the outer material, it became harder and harder to tear out. It was bound so tightly that it seemed as if the algae was rooted in the ducklings' very bones. All they could do now was rest. In the morning, everything was as it was that night. The only thing left to do was to finish the journey. So they waddled to the island's edge, each offering a thoughtful glance at the duckling, and plunged into the water. The time had come for the duckling to hop in too. He felt lighter and more capable than before. But he was far from healed. Closing his eyes, he hopped in and started paddling. Though he still swam strangely, he managed to stay afloat, all the way to the final docking point, and up climbed each duckling, back to their beloved firm ground. There was one last step in the process. It was time to fly. So they all spread their wings for the first time and lifted themselves off the ground into the clouds. They all took off until only one duckling remained. He broke the slimy seal of the shackling weeds and inhaled deeply. He could see his wings flare out beside him, but they didn't feel like his own. Bracing himself, he ran out into the grass, leaping as high as he could while pumping his wings. He weightily began to ascend up towards the clouds. It was the hardest thing he had done yet, but he was gaining height. Finally, he felt a brief relief knowing that he could make it. But just as he dropped his guard, he started falling. In a panic, he beat his wings with all his strength, but he had spent too much of it already. A dark cloud gathered beneath him. He tried as hard as he could to stay above it, but could only watch as it slowly approached. His last drops of hope left his blurry eyes as the thick, shadowy haze swallowed him up completely. Surely, he never could have made it. The end. What a happy story. So what did this all mean? What is the duckling story? Well, that was, again, it's the story of graduating and how I felt graduating high school. A deep sense of hopelessness. I'm sure you picked up on that by the ending. And it's genuinely how I felt. You might have noticed like I was always the duckling, the algae-ridden duckling was always like pulling ahead. And what that's alluding to is that I was not the top in my class. I was like the second. I was competing for first place academically in my class. And like that was all I ever knew. It was all I ever knew. And yet when it came down to it, like as the moment to like graduate and go be an adult approached, it was just like it just became more and more clear to me like there's no way. This is like I'm screwed. I'm nowhere near prepared because I was constantly fighting to keep my head above the water. Just in regular old school, how in the world am I supposed to go to college or get a job? How am I supposed to be an adult if I can't keep my head above water in just this? And I use the drowning metaphor very intentionally, as I did in the story, because I actually had an experience as a kid where I had almost drowned, and it felt just like school, except extended over a period of years rather than a period of minutes. The urgency, the knowledge that you can't really ask for help because you're too busy trying to keep air in your lungs. And if you stop for a moment, everything comes crashing down. My entire waking life as a teenager, no joke, this is not an exaggeration, was overlaid with anxiety relating to my grades. Every single minute. My grades were like the number one priority to me. And a lot of that was definitely avoidable if I had the right priorities. But I didn't have the attention span to resolve that priority. I was constantly stressed out because I couldn't get myself to sit down and do my homework. It was like every dopamine molecule in my brain was wired against actually sitting down and making the stressors go away. A very obvious case of mental disorder. But apparently, get this, you're going to get a kick out of this one. Apparently, I couldn't get an ADHD diagnosis. They wouldn't even take me seriously because I had good grades. So I was just miserable all the time, 24 hours a day, because I just didn't know any better. I needed guidance that I didn't have. So now I'm trying to pass that along. I'm not just whining, I swear. And no, I was never actually diagnosed with ADHD. And to be fair, I don't really know if that's what was going on. Really kind of seems like it, doesn't it, though? I can't even, and like I was always ahead. I was always like academically an A student, right? But it cost me everything. It cost me everything to maintain that. And I was under the illusion that that was a good thing, that was like a sacrifice that I was supposed to be making. In hindsight, I realized, no, this was stupid. Academics is kind of worthless, honestly. It was worthless because like I didn't develop any of the structures that I needed to actually capitalize. And don't get me wrong, grammar and algebra, very, very cool, very valuable. And to a lesser extent, just the general exposure to different subjects. I think that is actually, it's useful. It's just the system is full of bloat. It's overwhelmingly full of bloat to the point that I think one of the main benefits of school outside of grammar and algebra is just the opportunity for socializing and I guess the space to explore your own interests and identity. I say this even as a grammar non-believer. Of course, the academic style of grammar is useful. I mean, like it emerged the way it did for a reason. It's good at communicating logical ideas. So it's good for everyone to have that. That could be another video, and it may well be. I dropped out of college because I genuinely could not handle it. Going to college Like just immediately, even when I think that it's not going to happen this time it's going to be different. I'm feeling confident. I go into college, and then like within a week or two, at least within a month, like severe depression just takes over, severe anxiety, and it's just like I start feeling like I'm completely and utterly hopeless again, just like I did when I was in high school. Because it's like to do that kind of stuff, it takes everything from me and gives me nothing in return. The message is, if you're in high school and you're like the top student and you're sacrificing everything to get that, you're doing it wrong. You're doing it wrong. High school is not there to make good grades. It's not even really there to learn the material that they're teaching you. The point of high school is to build these social structures, as I understand it. And it's a really screwed up and like dysfunctional system. And some people like me just get screwed over by it. It doesn't work. And when you put all of your eggs into the academic basket, you come out with nothing. Theoretically, having those good grades is an advantage. But it's only an advantage if you have built the structure in your life, if you've learned the other related skills to actually capitalize on it. I didn't learn anything from school other than how to make good grades in that particular school environment. That's the only thing I learned from school. And I learned how to hate myself, and I learned how to suffer. I didn't learn how to suffer through anything. I just learned how to suffer and deal with the suffering and just accept that things were horrible and that there was nothing I could do with them. That was genuinely my takeaway from high school. And that's kind of what's reflected here. Is it like I felt like I was not cut out for the world, for the real world, and that there was nothing I could really do about it. And like that last line in the story, what was it? Something like, surely he never could have made it on his own, or something. Like what that's alluding to is like I couldn't justify any other reality other than my brain does not work. My brain is not adaptive enough to live in society. I know that I need to be doing something with my life, and I know I need to work towards being financially stable, but right now I feel like it's hard to envision myself kicking into that gear because I feel like my brain is messed up. So instead I'm focusing on making art as fast as I can. I want to train myself to become a disciplined artist of some sort. And I consider this art, not the story itself. The story was not actually as bad as I thought it was going to be. But just the sharing of the story and the sharing of my experience. I just want to leave some breadcrumbs for people who are in a similar situation to me. So yeah, if you're in high school and you're investing all of your eggs into academics, it's a scam. It's a scam unless you can do that while maintaining social relationships. Social relationships are probably the most important thing. I say this as someone who is an introvert in high school. I say this as someone who is an introvert now. The most important thing you can get out of school is it's really hard to make friends. It's not even just hard to make friends. It's always hard to make friends. But once you leave high school, once you leave a space like that, our society has pushed out just about every opportunity to make connections with people after high school. High school is your free trial. And you need to capitalize on that. You need to get over your fear of just feeling like you're so hopelessly awkward and no one likes you, because everyone feels that way. Most people feel that way. People who actually genuinely think that you're a bad person and you're annoying and you're awful, those are not people. You don't have to care about them. You can ignore them. I know it's hard, but it's really the only answer. And some of the answer might be you need to make yourself more interesting. Another thing in high school is like find a niche, find a thing that makes you unique. You know, make YouTube videos, learn programming, do something, learn art. Find like an identity for yourself and use that to make social connections. In hindsight, what I should have been focusing on a lot more than school, because my good grades have not helped me. School sucks. We live in an era where school sucks, and it's like a really fundamentally broken and horrible thing. But there are still things that you can gain from it, and you need to be acquiring those things. You need to actually be capitalizing on the social potential. I don't care if you're an introvert. I don't care if you're scared out of your mind. You need to. It's what's going to be good for you. It's what's going to make you happy. This is the only thing, really. Got it in my head that school was the most, that academics was the most important, and I was just wrong. I was just wrong, and now I have to deal with that now, because no one had ever made it clear to me that, yeah, school is actually useless compared to what you could be getting from high school. Now, like, that doesn't mean that you will keep all of your friendships in high school. Don't make that mistake either. You're not going to keep all your friendships from high school, but like, at least learn the social skills to make connections with people. Learn the social, like, experiment, you know? Don't be a jerk, but experiment with, like, what are the boundaries that people can tolerate? How much of yourself can you sacrifice? Because, like, I feel like, yes, you need to be yourself, but you also, to an extent, need to limit yourself. And it's a really delicate balance, and it really depends on your exact situation. I think I would err on the side of, you need to learn who you are as a person first. You need to confidently be that person with your whole chest. Sometimes you need to pull back a little, and that's fine, that's normal. Learn how to interact with people while you can, while it's easier. And it's not like it's easy, but like, it just has to be done. It just has to be done. You know, if you do that, if you're an introvert in high school or in any kind of school, in college even, if you go out and make some friends, I know you feel lonely. I know you feel lonely because I'm you. Go out and make friends, and you know what that means? That means you're actually, if you make friends with another introvert loser, you know what you just did? You just cured someone of loneliness. You did that. You just cured yourself and somebody else of loneliness. And we need to get this cycle going. This is good. This is a good thing that I am not an example of. And I wish that I was. If I could do it all over again, that's what I would change. Genuinely the main thing I would change. I was not happy to graduate high school because it felt like the beginning of the end. And I remember using that line, like, leading up to high school. This doesn't feel like a journey to the next chapter. This feels like the beginning of the end. And I made sure to include that line in the book. And it's because I had no community. It's because I didn't know, like, what I wanted to do with my life. And that's another reason why I said also, you need to find, like, a niche. You need to find a hobby. You need to find an identity while you're in high school. Those are so much more important than grades and exploring. You don't have to find your identity, but you need to be exploring as much as you can. As much as you can explore what you're interested in, what you're like. Go out and try things, and go out and learn to make connections. Those are so much more important than grades. That's something that's actually, unlike grades, that's something that's going to help you in life no matter what. Grades will only help you if you have the right, I don't know, situation. But social connections and having an identity is going to help you in all facets of life. Always. It's so much more, it's so much better of a deal. You need real in-person human experiences, and it's gonna be unfairly difficult for you. I'm speaking to people in school right now. I believe I'm speaking to Gen Alpha when I say this, because I feel really bad for you guys. And not because of, like, old man mentality. I feel bad because you guys are growing up in the same, like, school environment that I left. And let me tell you, it's bad. And it's only gotten worse from what I can tell. It's an environment that pushes you away from connection. It shelters you from experiencing real humanity. Want to know why you're alone and mentally ill and unhappy? I'll give you a hint. It's not exactly your fault, although you do have to be the one to pick up the pieces, unfortunately. Society is getting better and better at legitimately cannibalizing itself from the bottom up for profit. It's getting better at taking your conscious life and converting it into change jingling in someone else's pocket. You have to understand that, and you have to be willing to fight back. And it's going to be a fight, so be prepared. But how do you fight back? How do you fight back against targeted, algorithms? How do you fight back against the complete social breakdown of our society? The answer is you fight back by having in-person friendships and trying to make interesting things happen. Make things that are on the edge of your ability. Make and do things. You can make, or you can go out and do something that you don't think that you can do right now, something that's just outside your grasp. Now, don't fall into the trap of, oh, I'm going to work on my long video game franchise that I'm going to make for the rest of my life. That is also a trap. Don't strive for too far outside of your ability. That works for some people, but for most people, it's just gonna demotivate you. Go out and have truly novel experiences. And here's another trap. Here's the trap that I fell down. Getting this like breadth of knowledge from YouTube about like a ton of different subjects, that's not the kind of learning I'm talking about. Whoa, something just happened in my ears. My ears are ringing. You have to actually go out and do uncomfortable things. You have to go out. You have to go out and make friends. Form clubs. I love Smash Bros. I wish I had more people to play Smash with. And a lot of people probably feel that way about whatever subject they're interested in. So like go make a club. Go find a way to gather interest. Go do something that you think you can't do. Because I promise, you may not be able to do everything, but you can do way more than you think you can. Go bring people together. Go have novel experiences and go make things. Form community to build immunity. Because big tech is trying to devour your very conscious being constantly, trying to draw you away from experiencing your own life. You cannot sit back and let them win and take your life away from you. I'm not doing the old man thing. I'm not saying kids these days are always on their TikToks and I'm not saying that. I'm just saying don't let TikTok consume your life and beat you into a fetal position. And it's gotten scarily good at that. You know it's happening because it's not really a big secret at this point. Go do the things that you think are too cringe to do. Go do the things that you think are too scary to do. Even though they are scary and even though they might be cringe, do it anyway. Go out and do things that you think you can't do. But he was game.